Okay, hold on. Give this a second to. All right. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ken, your turn.
Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, somebody tell me if you can hear us. This will go for a couple seconds. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ken?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Now, when you hear me speak again. One, two, three, four, 5. Ken, your turn.
Test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Seltzer, yeah. Okay, we're going to be talking about all that. Guys, we'll start chatting here for a minute, but we're not actually going to be in the shoe until it's time. Give folks a chance to sign on. But got a lot to cover today. But one of the Ken, you were talking about, you didn't know that much about the CF-105 and the F-106, and I've been reading the books on the speed duel, on the racers, and following up with stuff I found online, and then I started researching the two airplanes, and I was a little surprised, I guess, at not only how much material is out there, but how recent a lot of it is. There's all these new scholarship coming out. This is still a hot and heavy. I mean, both of these airplanes would probably be out of service today, but I started doing some research, and I stumbled on some other stuff. You realize that the Century Series jets, by and large, were as fast, if not faster, than the modern fighters. Because speed has been, how can I put this? I mean, the F-22 is still pretty much about as fast as any of them. But you realize that an F-4 Phantom, the Arrow, the F-106, they could outrun an F-18. They could outrun all but a later model F-16. And when people say that this plane can outrun that airplane, you have to start getting specific. What configuration? What version of the aircraft? Because I'm telling you right now, you load up an F-18 or an F-16 with external stores, especially one of the older ones with the smaller engines, and yeah, you're going to have trouble. But you got one of the later F-16 with a Block 50 engine, and it's clean. Yeah, they've got F-16s that can make Mach 2 now. But
well, the F-111 could do, I think it was Mach 2.3.
Yes, but again, clean and optimum conditions.
Yes.
You start loading all the ordnance on it, and the drop tanks, and then they wind up flying it down low. And it can move fast down low, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it can do 2-3 with all that stuff hanging off of it. Yeah, it is a surprisingly fast airplane. But
it's also a pretty big airplane, too.
Well, I'm going to talk about the drag race between the F-106s and the Phantoms off the coast of Korea. If you guys have not seen Bruce Gordon's channel, he's an old F-106, F-102, and F-106 pilot. Really good stuff. He's got to be in his 70s now, I guess, maybe even his 80s. But he sharp as a tack, and he tells all these old stories about flying for the Air Defense Command back in the day. And you realize, and I've always loved the F-106, but there are so many variables that go into these speeds. When you see a maximum speed published, that is a clean airplane in optimum conditions. That is not a combat-loaded aircraft. And that's where everything starts to come into play. And there's so much more involved. And this is one of the things I was going to talk a little bit about tonight. Like Bruce was saying, he was flying a MiG-cap off the coast of North Korea, 2 F-106s and 2 F-4 Phantoms. Now the Phantom, cleaned up with nothing nothing on it, with those two big engines, was a little bit faster than a 106, right? And he knew it.
Yeah.
But you don't fly the airplane except for the reconnaissance model. The recce aircraft may fly that way because they're just ringing a camera, and they need that speed. And of course, you got the two engines, so if you cough a motor, you got a chance. You can still make it home. But he's talking about these are combat aircraft. Well, the F-106 carried everything in a bay internally. The only thing it had was those hyper aerodynamic, really slender external fuel stores. It burned a lot less fuel than the Phantom. When they would do fuel checks, the Phantom would have more time than them, but 45 minutes before they had to bingo, the Phantoms had to go back to the tanker because they were drinking it so fast. And he goes, on the way back, the lead in the F4 said, okay, it's race time, and everybody firewalled him. He says, this Phantom streak, just shot right up to Mach 1.3. And he and his wingman just sat back and watched them start to disappear out in front of them. Then they lit their burners because the Phantoms had all the missilery and tanks and everything hanging off of them. And he goes, and he and his wingman shot right past Mach 1.7. And then they asked if they could go up to 43,000 feet to finish the trip where they could hit Mach 2. So they left the Phantoms in the dust. If the Phantoms were clean, they probably could have outrun them, but they weren't. It's not the way, what's the point in taking a clean airplane to combat? You got nothing to shoot with. And so when people talk about these top end numbers, it leaves a lot out of the equation. And when we model, I normally build my models. When I build model jets, I normally make them clean because I just like to look at the airplane. But sometimes, like with that Kafir or that Eurofighter, that Typhoon, I'll go ahead and rack all the ordnance on it because it just looks so cool. But you realize this thing would barely be able to get off the runway. There's no way it's. And I was talking to an F-18 pilot who flew in the first Gulf War, and in his logbook he had, I think it was green ink on all the combat flying time in his logbook. They use a different color ink, and I think he had like 46 hours of combat time. And he was talking about they saw a pair of Mirage F1s, Iraqi Mirage F1s heading for Iran. And they went after them. They couldn't catch them because they had the early F-18s had such short legs on them. You know, they didn't have a lot of range. I mean, it was a fleet defense airplane. Well, anyway, they requested permission to punch off the tanks so that they could, catch them and shoot them down. And they were denied. And the Navy's attitude was a pair of those fuel tanks, because they didn't have a lot of replacement drop tanks. We're going to be talking about drop tanks tonight. He said those replacement drop tanks are too valuable because they extended the duration and range of the airplane. And a couple of antiquated F-1s just weren't a threat, and they were heading away from the fleet. And of course, for a fighter pilot to be told, you cannot drop your drop tanks and go shoot this plane down, it was like, that was anathema to everything they were about. And hey Chuck, it's just that's the way it goes. If he popped off those tanks, he probably could have caught him. But I don't think it would go through Mach with all three of the big centerline tank and both the big wing tanks. So when people talk about this plane's faster than that airplane, that's a very open-ended statement. Combat configuration is what matters. And the F-106 was a dedicated air defense aircraft designed to go out and shoot down Russian bombers. And it was optimized for that, and that's why it did what it did very well. The Phantom, on the other hand, was a very good multi-role airplane. It was a good dogfighter. It was fast. It was a good bomb dropper. I mean, it was really a fighter bomber. And it had the back seater where it had a bigger, better radar. And of course, both airplanes are going through upgrades. But the F-106 wasn't designed to do those things. And the only reason the F-106 had a 30-year career with the Air Force is because it was so good at that one mission. But the Air Force was moving away from single-mission aircraft, which is why airplanes like the F-15 and F-16 that can do pretty much every job out there, from tanking with buddy stores, bombing, deep interdiction, reconnaissance, fighting, air superiority. They do it all, and that makes sense. And normally a jack of all trades is a master of none, but the way aviation's going, it looks like that may not be the case anymore. So that was, but that's only that's only a piece of the equation. We're going to be talking about some of this again when we talk about the Arrow and the 106, because there's a lot of factors. Man, I saw some really in-depth analysis of both airplanes on both sides of which one was better. And
between what?
Between the CF-105 Arrow and the Convair F-106, and because those two airplanes basically would have had the same mission. But there's a lot to get into that involves the Iroquois engine, it involves the radar systems, and a lot of other stuff, and that we'll be talking about when we get to that part of the show. And I'm going to try and keep it brief because that could be a 10-hour documentary by itself. But in Canada, they were making what could have been a world-beating airplane, and the Diefenbaker government killed it, largely no small push from the U.S. Because we wanted to. One reason
they wanted to build bum arcs.
Well, that's part of it. I don't know how much. It was a lot cheaper, than the Arrow program, but it was also a lot less capable. Of course, we never used the things, thank God. So, but that's only small. That is only a tiny piece of the equation. Eventually, the Canadians got they got the F-101 Voodoos and the F-104s, a lot of other stuff. But it's one of those things where it gets a lot deeper than that. I think one of the things that the U.S. defense industry was concerned is that if the Canadians ever perfect that airplane and get the Iroquois engine to work, which had twice the thrust of their J-75s, they're going to have. They could very likely have a world-beating airplane, and Convair, McDonnell Douglas, and the rest of the U.S. They would have gifted them airplanes if it meant they'd stop development on something they might have to compete with. Ken, whatever you're rubbing, stop it. Ken.
Hang on. Still there?
Yeah, you were making all kinds of racket.
Sorry, I had to take the protective case off my phone so I could plug in the headphones.
What time are we looking at?
It's 6:58.
Okay. Talk to the folks, Ken. I'm going to be back in about 60 seconds, and then we're going to kick this off. Going to light this can. I'm going to stick this pig.
What do you want me to talk about?
I don't care. Tell them about your moving in.
Well, that'll take a lot longer than this 2 hours. I just, last Sunday, I just moved into a new house and had all kinds of fun adventures. We ordered a new, very fancy washer and dryer, the stacking kind. And while they were in the process of putting it in, one of the construction trucks, because we're in a neighborhood that's still being built, drove past and took the mirror off the delivery truck. Well, they got a little distracted and a little annoyed, and they didn't finish hooking the whole thing up, so they got to come back again. They texted me a little while later and said, "Hey, we left some tools there. Can we come by and get them?" I said, "Yeah, sure. You can finish the installation." And I never heard anything back. Yeah, loads of fun. Although I am sitting in a brand new couch with electric recliners, which is very comfortable. Enjoying those. I got my pinball machine here. Gotta have that.
Your F-14 pinball machine.
What else are we going to talk about?
That's okay. I'm back.
Oh,
All right. The interesting stuff then I'll begin. Okay, let me light this thing up. I'm going to start turning stuff on here.
Somebody's saying the volume's too low.
Volume's too low. Check, check.
Checking.
There I are. Well, hello, everybody.
Max.
And welcome back to another, let me slide this a little closer. And everybody, welcome back to another scintillating episode of Max's Models and the pregame show. We got a lot to talk about today. And one of the first things was, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with these. Let me get to my pictures here.
Oh, thanks, Trace.
Oh, hey, Trace. That is called a lakester or a lake racer. That's the Bonneville Salt Flats. And if that looks like an airplane's drop tank, that's because that's what it is. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. And now that's probably a 75-gallon drop tank right there. But let's go back and start at the beginning. What? First off, real quick, we'll talk about the kinds of drop tanks that existed. A lot of people don't know this, but some of the drop tanks were made out of impregnated paper. As you know, aluminum was a critical material supply. In fact, for a long time, the pilots weren't even allowed to drop their aluminum drop tanks. So there's two kinds of drop tanks, basic kinds, belly tanks and wing tanks. I believe most of the racers are probably made out of wing tanks because they had a large diameter. Belly tanks, like the one on the lower left, had to be flattened for ground clearance. You saw a lot of those on Thunderbolts. And some of the tanks were aircraft specific and some weren't. These, by the way, these are only American.
Like Vietnam War?
No, these are World War II.
Tanks?
No, World War II. World War II.
Oh, these are World War II. Oh,
World War II.
Okay.
Yep. So what happens is the wing tanks, particularly that 150-gallon one, upper right, I think that was probably the most popular one for making these lake racers out of. But let's go on down to the next picture.
Oh, my fans say they can't hear me, that I'm still too soft.
All right. Okay, try it now.
How about now, guys?
Let me adjust the sensitivity on this. Hold on. There, I have increased the gain.
Okay. I'll do a test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Y'all picking me up better now?
Let me see if I can turn you up on the phone a little bit. On the phone. Nope, it's up all the way. So, anyway, apparently, oops, careful, knocking stuff over here. So apparently, no matter where you go, the Americans will find a way to race anything. They started making these. And by the way, this is taken Italy, I think in 44. So I don't know if there's actually an engine in that thing or something they made as a gag or what. But that is actually something that they made out of an honest-to-God drop tank off of that P-38.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. Okay. I think you got a little bit too loud there.
Well, okay, and I'll just move it. There we go. Okay, some people are saying it's okay, and some people are saying it's still low. All
right, we'll just wait a bit. See if anybody.
Way too low. No, it still says way too low. Ken sounds fine. That's from Fred. How does it sound to everybody else?
Testing.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Fred sounds good.
It does like the predicted car. Okay. Yeah, you're actually getting it before I am. So, that led to, after the war, the guys come home. They win the war. They come home. There are tons of these things. Now, these are actually the paper tanks, the impregnated paper tanks. And a quick way to tell is if you look on the nose section and the tail section, you see some slight seams on them. And that's how you can tell a paper one at a glance. But these things were everywhere. And you could buy the aluminum ones after the war for like $35. And guys started making stuff like this out of them. And this is one of the larger tanks. And these are, of course, the faster cars. And I believe that's a flathead V8 stuck in there. Hardly any room for the driver. Now, the reason I bring this up is, to my knowledge, no one has ever made a kit of this. And it seems like it'd be the easiest thing in the world to kit bash. Because all we need are some 1/48 scale drop tanks and tires for cars and stuff. And you're off. So I'm going to see if I can kit bash one of these eventually. There's a smaller one. Ken, are you breathing in the microphone? Because I'm getting noise from you.
Sorry.
So anyway, that's.
You should know I'm still alive.
Yeah, okay. That's an acceptable situation. But you can see how they modded them out and everything. And of course, that's got the little small engine. I bet the little buggers still move. I forgot to download a picture of it. I was watching the stuff, more recent stuff out from Bonneville. And people had a thing. I thought it was like a radio control, like a 1/3 scale radio control model. Turned out it was a 50cc moped that the guy got to inside a conformal body like that. The guy got to go 139 miles an hour. But anyway, these things are, we're talking. I mean, it's about as basic as it gets, folks. But this is what led. This kind of competition is what led to later things like the land speed record attempts and stuff. And, man, there is not an inch to spare in that thing. Of course, these guys...
It seems like, to me, a lot of work to take a drop tank. I mean, you're cramming this thing with a lot of mechanical stuff. And you got this simple little shell around it. You think it would be easier just to make the shell.
Oh, no, Ken. Compound curves like that in sheet metal are very difficult to make. And I mean, not when you're a factory that's set up to do it, but for the average guy, I mean, people like Gene Winfield and all the car designers that made all the Hollywood cars and stuff were all master sheet metalers. They had guys who specialized in that. The average, no, and keeping it symmetrical and everything else. But they showed in the one of the YouTube pages I went to showed a lot of other uses for drop tanks. People were doing everything from making office furniture out of them and everything else. But also don't forget, these things are made to hang on an airplane wing at 400 miles an hour. They have considerable structural integrity and lightweight, and they're pre-manufactured, and you can buy one after the war for $35. So they were actually kind of the natural go-to. And there were a ton of them. And I mean, don't get me wrong, if you know what you're doing, as you said, ball peen hammer, if you know what you're doing, you can shape it. But think of how long it would take a person to shape that versus just getting one, hey, and driving home in your truck, and you're cutting on it that day. So, and it's about as aerodynamic as you can get.
Fiberglass technology.
Well, this is you got to remember. First off, metal's got a lot of advantage. Aluminum's got a lot of advantages over fiberglass. Working with fiberglass is a nightmare. You got to make a mold first. I've done some of it. It is not fun. And these, got to remember, Ken, these are cheap and they're readily available.
Okay.
I mean, the reason you don't see these things around anymore is because after a few years they used up the supply, but people moved on to other things. Here are a couple of them that have been preserved, and of course, my guess is if you're much over 5'8" and weigh over 140 pounds, you're probably not even getting in that thing. But you got to give them credit, man. That is, and the nice thing though is that as a kit bash, that's got to be an easy thing to kit, relatively easy thing to kit bash, and they never made kits of these things. And I'm thinking some kit model company that already has the molds for drop tanks could probably, and cars could probably just cobble the parts together and make a kit out of thin air, from stuff they already have on the shelf. It's just one more a revenue stream. Now, there have been, this is a die cast. This is from Steve's Models Mania's personal collection. These are die cast, and so there have been models made of them, but no, to my knowledge, no plastic kits. Only the die cast, and that's pretty good detail
Adam
in there.
says the cat fits just fine.
Yeah, let the cat drive the thing. As I learned from watching,
there, right?
That is a die cast model.
Wow, that's nice.
Really good detail too. So if I was gonna kit bash one, putting the louvers and cooling fins and everything, that's actually a little more work than it looks like if you want to go for that level of detail.
So what kind of speed records did they set with these?
I never got around to looking at it, but I'm guessing something that small probably went 150. So anyway, the Sky Cycle. No, I don't. I don't have a picture of the Sky Cycle by Acme Diecast. Now, these things, were running around Bonneville for a while. Of course, people were pushing land speed record. It's weird. I was just watching a YouTube channel. I think it was called oh gosh, I forgot. I meant to write it down. The Toy Attic or something. So it's an elderly gentleman and his wife that have an enormous collection of toys up in their attic, and they just do videos on them. And they were talking about land speed record models, and he was talking about that he actually knew Ethel Graham, who was their mechanic, was their family's mechanic. Now Ethel Graham was killed around 1960 trying to set a land speed record, and this was after Mickey Thompson told him not to try it because his car wasn't up to it. But anyway, real tragedy there. But that was in something that looked a little more like no, not that. Hold on, we'll come back to that.
We'll be here, Bill Campbell. He had to go eat.
Oh, okay, it looked like those. Now these are the hot kits. Now here's what I was a little annoyed at. There were no land speed record kit model cars. Given that cars make up over 65% of kit models and over 85% in this country, I think, I find it shocking that no one made an accurate model of Spirit of America or any of those. Now there are models made die cast. That's the Spirit of America jet engine die cast. Now these again from Steve's. There's the one that's currently almost set the record. It made the world's fastest U-turn at about 600 miles an hour. That was Craig Breedlove's last attempt, and he almost got there too because he said he had surplus power left. He may have gone Mach 1 before the British did. British family took the title, but and that's his early one that broke 400. And long stories behind both those cars, but what shocks me is There are kit models of just about everything on wheels, and there's no kit models of these, which is surprising to say the least, given how popular racing is and speed records. And I realize it's kind of sad when Craig Breedlove, I was a kid when I was a baby when Craig Breedlove broke the 400 miles an hour in the Spirit of America. But I can remember as a little kid seeing that car and others that were trying to set speed records on the covers of magazines. And when the British finally did it in the, I guess it was the mid 80s or whenever it was, in that big twin engine monster that they made, it made a blurb on the news and that was it. Makes me worry about the spirit of adventure. I mean, come on, the man went supersonic in a car, people. That's worth more than a 30-second news blurb. Hey, Mike. Revell did Mickey Thompson's Challenger in 1961. Okay, I knew there was one. Now, actually, it's funny you should mention that because I happen to have... Okay, where is it? Okay. I know I got it in here somewhere.
I've never seen a documentary on this.
Now there's a Challenger. Now this is a piston. This has got wait a minute. The Challenger is the one with 4 piston engines, if I remember correctly, and that's Mickey Thompson's car. You know, I started reading on Mickey Thompson. They should make a movie about that guy because it's right out of Hollywood, including his unfortunate. He was the victim of a murder. He and his wife both. They were whacked probably by his business partner, who wound up eventually going to prison for it, but they never found the triggermen. Very sad. But and Thompson, if I remember correctly, he was using Pontiac engines because Chrysler wouldn't give him any, and even Pontiac didn't give him new ones. But that's a die-cast. But that is, I think, the only land speed record car that I could think of that had a kit made of it. Now, you will notice the hot kits that they came out with, Alky-Seltzer, Turbogo, Bonnie Buggy, and Dynamo. They're all basically the same body with the, cockpit rearranged. Probably so they could use, the same molds or not have to do much, recutting or whatever. These are, I love it, the torque powered, no batteries, it's, required. It's got a rubber band in it. And they actually repopped these. Testers repopped these a while back, and they weren't cheap. But the guy, the Toys in the Attic, was his wife got him all 4 of the repops, and although they use the same art, they changed the boxes a lot because they were actually concerned about people trying to palm off new ones as counterfeits, which is sad. People counterfeit models, but they do. And but what?
I was just going to say, has anybody turned these into slot cars?
I am sure. If they haven't, because I can't believe that slot car racers somewhere haven't turned these into slot cars. Although I don't know of any. I didn't look into slot cars if there were any of the land speed record slot car models made. That would pay more probably. But I have to. Is John out there or Mark? They're huge slot car. They know everything about slot cars. But I'm sure those could easily be converted. And they were, actually they're pretty cogent looking models. I mean, they look like what an LSR car of that period would look like. And but I guess this way they didn't have to pay any royalties or anything. But I'm just kind of surprised, given all the NASCAR stuff and everything else and dragsters they do. You'd have thought they would have been kicking Craig Breedlove's door into, hey, let's make models of your car, Craig. You're on the cover of magazines. And he's, I think he's in his 80s now, but he's still around. And these cars are from a time when everybody thought big. And what amazes me is all these Lakesters and all these land speed record cars, except for the British, who actually somehow managed to get real funding behind it. I think it was a matter of national pride. But all these guys were were garage mechanics working on shoestring budgets. And as I've been reading this book, the Speed Duel, the guys you've been talking about, half their motivation was they saw guys doing it that, were garage mechanics and ran printing presses. I mean, they were blue collar guys. And here they were using their ingenuity and making these amazing cars and doing these amazing things. And, I mean, Mickey Thompson didn't he came up with Mickey Thompson tires. He managed to make some money at it. I actually listened to Craig Breedlove talk about how he got, well, according to the name of the video, how he got ripped off by Carroll Shelby. That's not exactly right. But Breedlove was one of the biggest engineering problems that these guys had was the tire technology. The tires simply weren't made to go that fast. And, most cars would blow apart at a given speed. They had trouble keeping traction above 200 miles an hour. Obviously a lot of issues. So, I think was it Goodyear or Goodrich? I forget which one it was. Carroll Shelby was the distributor. I want to say it was Goodyear. He was the West Coast distributor. Hey, John, we just had a question for you. Ken, I think you're missing some of the comments.
I'm looking at them.
Okay. John, do you know... oh, there it is. Yes, these can be made into slot cars. But John, do you know if anybody actually manufactured any slot cars or the land speed record cars or the lakesters or any of that stuff? But anyway, Shelby did not want to mess with these land speed record, super high performance and dragster tires and all that stuff because he just wanted what he needed and was making a lot of money. He saw the rest of it as a distraction. He didn't want to deal with it. And he happened to be having dinner, and Breedlove was there and said, well, look, if you want, I'll take care of that for you. And I'll give you 10% of whatever I make. So they did a handshake deal. And Breedlove turned it into a real profit center. And all of a sudden, Carroll Shelby one day woke up and realized that, holy crap, Breedlove's really turned these, dragster tires into something, and he basically said, well, kid, thanks for building the business up for me. Now I'm taking it all back away from you. And he was the distributor. It was his business. But apparently he left Craig high and dry and just, no more tires for you after he built the business up. And he goes, I learned a lot from Carroll Shelby. Man, and he's like, main thing I learned was, no handshake deals, get it in writing. And
I thought you were going to say, don't trust Carroll Shelby.
Well, he was no different than any of the other people. I mean, it's a cutthroat business, and business in general is cutthroat by nature. I mean, competitive. Shelby had no obligation to let he done it on a handshake. Look, Ken, I got scorched that way myself on a couple of deals. Hey, I'll help build this up. You remember when you were doing the point of sale? Everybody and their brother was trying to take advantage of you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Ken wrote a point of sale program for restaurants and marketed it, and you had 50 installs, and we were trying to get
well over 100.
Yeah, and we were trying to get a bigger company because he's a single guy working out of his house, right? So no one will invest in you because you're key man. If anything happened to Ken, that'd be the end of it. So we're running around talking to all these people about trying to invest in it, and everybody just wanted to basically rip the code off. Here's $20,000 check, $10,000 check. Give me your code and all your rights and all your installs. Like, that ain't how this is not how this works.
Exactly.
Anyway, enough of that. Back to models. So,
a lot of those guys used my ideas.
Yeah, because you would let them look at the code, Ken.
No, I didn't let them look at the code. They just saw my program in the restaurants and went, oh, hey, that's a good idea, and then incorporated it into their program.
Yeah, they did. But, so anywho, because no car or airplane designer ever ripped off any ideas from his neighbor.
Oh, no, not at
all. They had cranks to be wound up. They were not pullbacks. Oh, okay. I was wondering how they worked. I almost bought one of them off of eBay but I figured I don't have time to get it for this video before the live stream. But then I realized also that the things have actually gotten kind of pricey. And it's one of those little models I probably knew about them, but never given them a second thought. And
I remember seeing this video.
I'm sure I saw these in the stores
many years ago, talking about setting the world land speed record. And you were right; the tires were a huge problem.
Oh yeah,
the regular tires had just come apart.
Tire technology, depending on who you ask, and of course, mind you, I've only recently gotten into cars, largely due to the Glue Trooper sending me books on them. It's rekindled my interest in them, but it's my understanding that tire technology has usually been one of the weak links, even today. The frames, the bodies, the engines can do things, but the tires can only hold the road so tight. And one of the reasons the Shelby Cobra got a reputation as a killer was because the tire technology hadn't caught up with the performance of the car, depending on who you want to ask. But
well, the reason I bring that up is I was going to. I think I know the answer to this. Is I don't think anybody did any wind tunnel testing on these things.
Actually, no. Craig Breedlove did, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Kim, because that brings up something I wanted to talk about. And that one really got to label my pictures better. I'll just give everybody a little case of vertigo.
The other guy who tried setting the land speed record that had a really good chance of doing it, he just said, well, we just kind of go by, that looks right.
Well, there was a lot of that. Absolutely, there was a lot of that. But hold on just a second. There's a... Where is it? Oh, come on. Okay, here we go. I want to have this picture up. Just a second. Fit the screen. Transform, fit the screen. Whoa, try that again. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Be right with you. Fit the screen. There we go. Okay. Here is Craig Breedlove, a model, a die-cast model of Breedlove's Spirit of America. And like I said, I can remember this car being on the cover of magazines. Now, he had a friend that worked at Revell Models cutting patterns. Now, as you know, Ken, patterns are what you cut that the mold maker will pantograph to carve the steel out to make the part that'll be injected, right?
Right.
And it was in fact, Breedlove, when he was a little kid, he used to wrestle, and his mom made him a costume, and his buddy had one, called him the Golden, anyway. That kid that he used to wrestle, he grew up beside, turned out to be a pattern maker at Revell. Breedlove wanted to put it in the wind tunnel, so he had the guy make a 3-foot wind tunnel model of the car, and they went and had it wind tunnel tested. And he got another friend of his was a Lockheed. They hooked him up with I think it was a Lockheed engineer who helped him design the intakes and a lot of other stuff. So, and then they took the tail off, then they put the tail back on. But so there was wind tunnel testing. The Granville brothers wind tunnel tested the GB. That's why it's shaped the way it is. That's not just an accident of design. So he understood all that, and he actually took a more scientific approach. I don't know if the Brits had theirs wind tunnel tested or not, but so.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they did. They had a lot of money behind that operation.
But yeah, but Breedlove didn't. I mean, he had the engine that he got for this thing, which originally I think had been a J47, but I think he was able to get his hands on a 65, I think. But it was one that a industrial school was using to teach kids how to take apart and put back together jet engines and do maintenance on them. So he got it for just a few grand. And I mean, he's not flying in the thing, so no harm, no foul. But anyway, he had for a guy who was working basically out of a garage, he sacrificed his marriage to make this happen. And I'm not saying that as a good thing or a bad thing. It's just what happened. But British had their Lark land speed record cars in the later years, computer designs. Yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, I think there is a place in the kit model business for these cars even today. I mean, all of us know who they are or what they are, and I just think they would sell. Let's put it this way. If I was going to buy a model car and I saw that would partly for nostalgia because I remember when it was all over the papers, but also because they just look awesome. They're just cool looking cars. I think I'd buy it.
It looks like an airplane with no wings.
It reminds me of a P-80. It does. It kind of have that Lockheed look to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you slap wings on, you pretty much have a P-80 with a much better engine. But
and enough power.
Yeah. Again, I think the tires limited more than the aerodynamics did. In fact, even when Breedlove was racing that one, the new Spirit of America, the thing that looks like an eagle from Space 1999, that had 3 wheels up front, but it caused a bad vibration, so they removed the middle wheel. So even as late as that, the wheels are still and also there were a lot of issues with condition of the salt flats. a lot of people don't realize Bonneville may be big, wide, and open, but that is salt, and different weather conditions and different things happen that cause the conditions of the track, or I should say the lake bed, to have issues. And one of them is there's something called brine, and I really don't know what that is, but apparently it's underneath. If there's a lot, they were talking about how certain factories producing stuff causes effects and different weather and rain. There are a lot of things that affect. I mean, look at this picture of the not that one, of the.
When that video I was telling you about, they said sometimes the surface of the track was like mashed potatoes.
Yeah, I mean, look, there you go, right there. All this, you can tell. I mean, I'm assuming when this picture was taken, the condition of the salt flats was not that great. Look how it looks like he's riding in the snow. Look how much crap is packed up on those tires. And that would make a cool little diorama. It really would. Anyway, so
you could use real salt for it.
Actually, it wouldn't scale out quite right, but I suppose you could.
If you ground it up.
It's salt, Ken. It's already ground. Anyway,
okay.
So I the thing I wanted to bring up with all this is I think that these need to be kitted. And I would imagine if somebody contacted Breedlove, if there are rights to be had, you could probably get them for a song. And that one, the white one, is in a museum right now, so I'm not sure what happened to the other one. But anyway, you could do a whole land speed record, or you could do the Bonneville series, all the stuff that raced out there. You can make the world's fastest Indian and everything else. There's so many vehicles out there of unusual shapes, and it seems like Hawk's the only people that ever caught the idea. I don't.
Does anybody know where these cars are now?
Well, I know the New Spirit of America is in a museum up in the Northwest.
What about that silver one that looks like an airplane?
That's Breedlove's first one. That's the one that originally had the J47 engine and then later was upgraded to I think I want to say it was 65. But anyway, it's
I was just wondering if it still existed.
I don't know. Drop the tires and use skis. Well, you'd set a world speed record, but it wouldn't be for a car. It might be for a snowmobile. Now.
Oh yeah, I remember the Blue Flame.
Oh yeah.
And the Green Monster. I saw somebody mention that one earlier.
Oh yeah, they're all in the book. Absolutely. Now, and these guys are busting each other's records every 6 months. So, by the way, so the reason I want to bring this up though is I'll just reiterate one more time, then we'll move on to the next thing. I think there is a kit model opportunity there, and judging by how popular these things apparently still are, because testers repopped them and a lot of people ran out and grabbed them. So, I think there's a market there. I think we're leaving money on the table. Now for something completely different. Everybody's been waiting on this one, especially the Canadian viewers.
Yes, of course.
All right. We're not going to settle it here, but we're going to talk about it. First off, I think the CF-105 Arrow is greatly underrepresented in the kit model world, whereas the F-106 is very well represented. It's almost the P-51 of the Century series. It's everybody's beautiful jet to make. And to my knowledge, only a handful of companies, I think Matchbox, Hobbycraft, and Aurora ever made the 105. Probably because it never went to serial production, but I don't care. It's still beautiful. Now, I have, like I said, went out online to research for today's video, and to this day, there are still websites dedicated to the argument between these two airplanes, and Reddit lines and everything else that are still getting comments. And one Canadian contributor made the point, he goes, you have to be Canadian to understand what the CF-105 means to us. And I think I know where he's going with that. Because whereas Europe had the Concorde, America had the space program, the CF-105 was the technology advancing airplane that was going to put Canada. It was going to make Avro the next, British aerospace. Now, a lot of people talk about, oh, the Aero couldn't do this, the Aero couldn't do that, the 106 was faster, yeah. So we're going to throw a couple of things out here. Don't read too much into those Mach numbers. And you and I were talking about this earlier, but the CF-105 was supposed to have the Iroquois engine, what in America we call the Iroquois. But it was, instead, because the Iroquois wasn't ready yet, it flew on a pair of J-75s. In fact, except for being a different subvariant, it had almost the same engine as the F-106. All right? Basically, and it's 10% bigger. It's a 77-foot airplane. The F-106 is a 70-foot airplane. The people talk about, well, the F-106 had a longer range. It was faster. Okay. The F-106 went into serial production. It had years of development, and it came off of an existing platform, the F-102. And I might add, when the F-106 first started flying, it wasn't anywhere near the performance that it later accomplished. It had a lot of teething problems. The Aero was grounded after only 71 hours of test bedding, and it never had the engine it was supposed to have. And that Iroquois engine was supposed to be about twice as powerful as those J-75s. It had a larger weapons bay. It could carry more ordnance. And over time, it never even had a fire control system because it never finished getting developed. It had room for a larger, better radar. It had a dedicated RSO in the back, radar systems operator. We'll never know between these two airplanes in the field which one would have eventually been the master, because the Aero never got developed. It never even flew with the engines it was supposed to have. But people are always so anxious to point out all the things the F-106 could do that the Aero couldn't. But the F-106 had years of development. It came off an existing platform. It continued to be developed its entire life. It had aero refueling added to it. It eventually got a gun. It got a clear canopy, even had a gun sight added. Even though there were all the F-106A except for the two-seater, it was still a very mature platform. The Aero never had the chance to become a mature platform. So when people start lambasting, oh, it was slower, it had shorter range, that was in the range it was configured in. It very well could have been built, modified over time, upgraded over time. Even the test pilot who flew it said even with the J-75s, they never took the airplane to its limits. Because a test program is done in stages. And the airplane never got anywhere near a full test program. So when people just look at these numbers and just go, oh, they were better off. And by the way, the Canadians didn't get the F-106. We shoved Beaumark down their throat. And of course, a lot of people say, well, it was over budget. The government was concerned that even if they got foreign sales, it would never offset the cost of development. That's a legitimate financial concern. But the thing is, they also could have sold the Iroquois engines to other countries that were building their own airframes. I mean, it was like I want to say supposed to be a 30,000 pound thrust engine back in the 60s. When I think the J-75 was putting out, I think 16,000 pounds, if I remember right. So it could have, now it was a big risk for the Canadians. If it did fail in the marketplace, it would have cost them dearly, and that is a legitimate argument. But people say, well, it never accomplished. Well, it's because the programs were never finished. Neither the Iroquois nor the 105 ever got their just due. And I'll tell you right now, both of those platforms, with modern avionics and weapon systems and engines, the airframes are still perfectly viable today. Now, the Aero had, by the way, the Aero was it's a little shaky because the 106 was a development program off the 102. So when they say which one flew first, that's a little squishy. But they were basically contemporaries. But the Aero was also a clean sheet of paper airplane, so it needed more development time. And probably at least a few years and a lot of money. It has the dog's tooth and the small stall fence down the wing, so they were going with a different aerodynamic standard. The 106 did have a really almost Concorde-like wing on it, which was extremely advanced technology. But I think over time, the Arrow, at a minimum, would have been a direct competitor to the 106. But I believe, whereas the 106 was pretty much pushed to its limits, I think the Arrow probably had the potential to go a little farther, a little faster, but mainly with a bigger radar and a bigger weapons load. We'll never know.
Well, bigger plane, you can put more fuel in it.
Well, that's it, and a dedicated weapon system operator. Don't forget, the F-106 had a smaller radar than the late model F-4 Phantoms, so it was. But the F-106 was jam full of electronics, and it was a buggy airplane for years because they were pushing so many new technologies. But what happened was the 106 got the development. Now, I'm not bashing the 106. I love that airplane. I'm just saying that people try to talk about all the things the 105 couldn't do. To prevent the number soup, I should say the Arrow and the Dart. That people keep talking about all the things the Dart could do that the Arrow couldn't. I'm like, because it only got flown 71 hours, we don't know what the Arrow was capable of. We never will. But I tell you, you could haul one of those things out. You could haul those two planes airplane out today, and go head to head with half the air forces of the world. And I mean, those were very competent platforms. And there was even one, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but even in more modern times, a 106 beat an F-16 in a dogfight. One of the 106 pilot, one of my professors in college was a 106 pilot, and he was talking about, you got one really good turnout of it that will care. But also, you could go up to 54,000 feet, get above everybody, and just look down, and start searching for targets. But today, you look at the jets of today, though, the F-22s, they're not really any faster. I mean, they can turn on a dime, they can accelerate quickly, they're stealthy, and they are jam full of sensors and avionics. So they're definitely a far more lethal platform. But speed-wise, they're not necessarily any faster. In fact, I think it seems about Mach 2.2, 2.3, everybody starts hitting that wall. And it's understandable because, man, that is a lot of air to push out of the way. And you start getting into excessive amounts of power for small incremental speed increases
with the square of the speed.
Exactly. And but I think somebody should make a 1/32 scale CF-105 and F-106. Those, I don't know where I'd put them, but I'd buy those in a heartbeat. And I do have a 148. Do you know
if any of the 105s made them to a museum?
Yes, one did. I'm not sure it was a real one or a mock-up. There's a nose section, but unfortunately, part of the deal was most of the stuff was destroyed, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a crime against history. The Canadians have recently been digging up the rocket-powered test models. The ones they use, they would fire on rockets to get data on and shoot them off in the lakes. They've been fishing those up lately, and they're going into museums. And but I've said it before, I'll say it again, it is only my humble opinion. I think that the real reason that the Arrow got the treatment that it got was when the United States Air Force was interested in buying it. Because remember, they were having a lot of problems with the 106. And here was an airplane that made all kinds of promises and looked like it could deliver in time. And I think once the U.S. defense industry saw that the Canadians had something that could be a credible threat to their sales, they called every senator they owned to put pressure on Eisenhower to go up and have Diffenbaker go with a different program. So they got Beaumark, and I don't know how Beaumark would have performed, but just Ken, you and I, what electronics were like back then. An unpiloted airplane as your defense against Russian bombers. I'm not sure I'm loving that.
Well, the reason the Beaumarks had nukes is because they were so darn inaccurate, and they had to hopefully take out a whole squadron.
Well, I think it was the idea, but thank God we never put that one to the test. But none of these airplanes had very long range because they were basically point defense interceptors. But later on, there is one thing about the F-106 that's important to note. I'm sure the Arrow would have eventually gotten drop tanks, just like the 106. And as I pointed out earlier, both of these airplanes did something that was really important. And that's why the Mach numbers on them matter, is because they had bomb bay. They had weapons bays. They flew basically clean. And you could do Mach 2. Bruce Gordon, old 106 pilot, runs a YouTube channel, says you could do Mach 2 in a 106 with the tanks on. You weren't doing that in any, all your weapons were internal. Like I said earlier, you hang all these weapons on the outside of a Phantom. Even though a Phantom was technically a little faster than a 106, clean, like a recce model, you start hanging Sidewinders and Sparrows and all that parasite drag off of it, especially with drop tanks, and they're down to Mach 1.3. And that's coming from the pilots. And you're burning a lot of gas to do it. Whereas the 106 was, with that single engine, very fuel efficient. And but the Arrow's got twice as much wing on it. I forget offhand. I want to say the 106 has 660 feet of wing versus the Arrow having around twice that much, I think. And so that means there was a possibility, depending on the airfoil and the engines, that the Arrow might have been able to get up into thinner air, which means going farther and faster and higher.
Or carrying a greater cargo load.
This is true. And I've got these books that I haven't had a chance to get started on, but I did want to bring this up because I know a lot of folks lately, that especially this Arrow build that I did, it's got me into it in a big way. And now, before I go on this subject, I don't know how many of you have ever seen the Canadian CL-52, and no, this is not Photoshop. A lot of people don't know the Canadians operated exactly one B-47 Stratojet. And it was, and they called it the CL-52, and it was a test bed for the Iroquois engine, which they did run. They did get it to fly. And it produced, I don't think it made the 30, I think it made 27,000 pounds of thrust, I forget, but you see how big it is. But not a lot bigger was what was it, Mike J-47s there? The good old, yeah.
On the tail?
Yeah, well, that's the only place you can find room. Which I thought would have thrown the weight and balance off, but they worked, But anyway, a lot of folks apparently never realized that the Canadians operated one B-47 for testing the Iroquois. I don't know what happened to that airplane from running with that Iroquois, but according to what I was able to find, when they gave it back to the Americans, they scrapped the airframe. So they said it was a nightmare to fly because that Iroquois lit off. Even though it was center line, you were burying the rudder because it just wanted to sling the airplane around to the left. That was a massive friggin' engine.
Terribly center line.
I was like, wow. Yeah, like the B-47 wasn't enough of a handful airplane to begin with. And, they were heady days. People were not afraid to experiment. Now, there is your kit bash. In fact, there is somebody who makes the B-47 model could just, given how many Canadians build models, you could take your B-47 kit, give it the proper decals, throw in an Iroquois engine, and sell it as a CL-52, and you'd sell 500,000 of them in Canada alone. And heck, I'd buy that and build it just because it's just awesome. But I wanted to point that out. A lot of people don't realize the Iroquois did get up in the air and it did get running. Unfortunately, I think that's the only aircraft it ever powered, and it almost made it do donuts to the left.
Oh, cool. Darkwood's 777 just said that there's 3 different models of the CF-105 on Thingiverse. That's a 3D printer website.
Yeah, 3D printing has changed everything. Kim, maybe you and I should 3D print a 1/32nd scale Arrow, a 1/32nd scale Dart, and get them all slicked up and everything, get them all painted up, and put them on our desks.
That would be cool. I'd like to do that.
Ah, man, I'm sorry. I mean, F-22s and F-35s are great airplanes. So are F-16s and 15s. And thank God, the Century series, the jets of the 60s and 70s, they had style.
Yeah, that they did.
Well, Ken, if we decide to build one of our own, we can always use this good old-fashioned technique. And yes, those are the airplanes from Air Force One and one of the ship models from Titanic. That's the big 40-footer. And you see the techniques they use. It's just like a big Guilos kit. And God almighty, that had to be expensive. Oh, by the way, side note. I can't believe they went into this. I always thought the Titanic was CGI. It wasn't. It was these models. That's how they got all those beauty passes and everything. The CGI was just adding the little people to them and stuff walking around on the decks. But that's a 40-foot model of the Titanic. And they used I don't know how 400,000 or something pins they cut the heads off of and drilled out a little hole. And every one of the rivets on the Titanic was a pin that they pushed in, that they clipped the tip off of, you know, so it didn't have to go in very far. And they glued them in place. I don't know who on God's green earth has that kind of patience. And I thought they just would have used little dabs of glue or something, you know, but nope. They were so those were real, okay, this is going to sound a little silly, real fake rivet heads on the Titanic model.
For those people who are rivet counters.
that is a new dimension in rivet counting. But I really admire the Hollywood model makers because everything they do pretty much is, for the most part, is scratch built. And when you're making a spaceship, you can kind of make anything wild and crazy. That's one thing. But when you're doing something like a MiG or a KC-10 or the ship like the Titanic, with all that detail, everything's got to be accurate because there's so many people that are going to watch this that know what it's supposed to look like. And that's what really, really impresses me. And that's probably why the things cost $1 million to make.
It takes a lot of people to put that much time and effort into making something that accurate and that big.
Now, John, I'm glad you could join us. You have a good one.
No wonder it sank.
That's not funny, Ken. Oh, that brings me to the next thing. Bringing up the sinking of the Titanic. You guys are going to love this. Maybe some of you knew this. I didn't. While I was doing this research, I stumbled onto the fact that in 1943, the Nazis made the movie Titanic. I kid you not. And it's out on YouTube, and of course it's all in German. Of course, they did a little rewrite of history, but the ship still sank. In their version...
I did hear something about that. I think their point was to try and make the Americans look bad.
The British. And the way they wrote it to make the British look bad was the first officer is a German, and the rest of the crew is British. He keeps trying to tell them of all the danger, and they won't listen. He keeps trying to save the day, and they won't listen. And finally, the arrogant British captain, rams it into the iceberg, and no one will listen to him, and he's trying to tell them the ship is sinking. Finally, they realize it, and it's all panic and pandemonium, which actually it was not. But anything to make the British look bad, our heroic German grabs his Frau and jumps in the water and swims her to safety and everything. And it's just kind of like, it was propaganda. And judging by the water, looking, because water doesn't scale, I'm guessing that's probably a 5 or 6 foot model they built. But the special effects actually weren't that bad. Of course, all the flooding was miniatures, like the inside. Even in the movie Titanic Cameron's, all the flooding of the cabins and everything, that was all miniatures and really good ones. Pierce Film Sense of Scale has some stuff on that. But I was like, really? The Nazi Titanic? Okay, I gotta watch that. That was interesting. So, speaking of the Germans, there is a new Panther tank, the Ka-52. And yes, they're calling it the Panther.
Interesting how we segue from one section to another.
Got to keep it moving, Ken. Keep the show. Roll along, roll along.
Did you actually plan that?
I want to make sure I had enough material to go from one thing to another. But here's the thing. This is not an upgunned Leopard. This is the first literally clean sheet of paper brand new tank that anybody's put out since the Russians put out the Armada. So this is maybe why they decided to build this, but this is a brand new clean sheet of paper German design, and it hasn't been around long enough.
This is a real tank.
No, this is yeah. You can go out on YouTube, put in Ka-52 Panther. It's all over YouTube. All the armor guys are talking about it and everything, and he's got like a 130 millimeter gun on it. It's a beast, latest of everything, and
it's a cool looking tank.
Heck yeah, man! Remember that video game? Was it Tank Battle? Back when it was, when the video games you dropped a quarter and it was just a black background with the little line vehicles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. That looks like it just rolled off the set of Tron, or Halo.
Those were called vector graphics.
Vector graphics, yeah. Yeah, it looks like it just rolled in off the set of Halo. But nope, it's the real deal. And I haven't been able to find a kit of it yet, but if there's not one out already, there will be soon. I'm wagering either Tacombe, Edward, or Tammy will be the first one out with it, assuming there's not one already. And the ship they used to live shoot was sunk by the Soviets. Yeah, that figures. Hey, quick, get the cameras on it. It's sinking for real. That's cold. Too soon? Yeah, the Atari Tank Battle video game. So anyway, guys, there may be some new models to be making in the future. I don't have any specs on it. I didn't have time to research it, but 7 road wheels, so it's designed to go fast, and it's got to be heavy. Speaking of stuff that never got...
Joe.
What? Now, switching gears again from the natural segue from armor to kaiju, because tanks and kaiju go together like Godzilla and submarines.
Oh yeah, the name of that game was called Battle Zone.
Battle Zone, that was it. So, here we go. How many of you remember Dogora? And to be honest, I didn't until I started researching this. I was looking for kaiju that never had models made of them, and I thought they'd made everything, and I stumbled on this and it's a Toho film. I'm not exactly sure how you'd make a model of a squid, but for all you hardcore kaiju fans out there, it'll be Tacombe, rest assured. But for all you hardcore kaiju fans out there, there's something new and different. And I watched Brandon's cult movie reviews on it. It was different. I don't know if I'd heard of it or not, but if I had, I'd totally forgotten about it. Oh, you watched it last night on Pluto. Okay. Well, great minds think alike. There was some artwork I found about it, and it actually, that's a movie that could be remade. Given some of the schlock I've seen coming out that are supposed to be past themselves a kaiju movie, it doesn't look like a jellyfish. This actually had the whole thing with diamonds didn't make much sense. You cut all that, diamond thieves and everything, but it was almost like a gangster flick and a kaiju flick put together. But actually, that had a little potential. It reminds me of the creatures from the movie Monsters, if you remember that. That was Gareth Edwards' first one, and that's why he got to do the legendary Godzilla. But, anywho, so I guess you would want to make that out of like a clear plastic, and not sure, heck, the whole thing may be made out of acrylic. But anyway, there's a kaiju that never got modeled, at least not to my knowledge.
I don't think it's going to be done anytime soon.
Well, that actually covers all the stuff that I had for planned for today. I think I have all the stuff planned, then I get into it and fly through it. A big calamari. But I got Snoopy done, and my wife liked this so much that she's is probably going to stay here in the house. Because I'm from Florida. Everything I know about hockey would fit in a thimble. But
we have a hockey team down here in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, they have one in Tallahassee, the Lizards. I think might have one here in Jacksonville. Folks, I was asked by several... There are a couple of things we're going to do, though. I'm not out of material. That's just all the stuff I had from the computer. I have models and stuff we're going to go over here today, including a Keeler's Custom. Had a folks asked me to go ahead, because I'm going to be gone for a week. They were saying they'd like to see a road build. So I was going to take that Lindbergh line Messerschmitt and Stuka 2-in-1 kit with me, but it didn't pack up. So I got my little travel kit. I'm taking the NPC Thunderbolt, and I got a sneaking suspicion that this is actually a rebox of somebody else's Thunderbolt. I don't know if NPC cut their own molds on airplanes or just bought them. And for something entirely different, this kit by Nito. This is the little Japanese post-war jet trainer, and I think it's the T1A, and it looks a lot like an F-86 with 2 seats, but and it's already molded in gray, so I can build it.
Couldn't even see it.
You couldn't see it?
Yeah, the other one.
Okay. That's the TT1 or T1A, and you do a little research on it. But that should make an interesting object for the shelf, and of course the MPC Thunderbolt. And this is a P-47. Now I want to clear something up. This is a P-47D, but as you can tell from the photograph, it is a Razorback. And there's a little misconception some people have. There were D model Thunderbolts that had the Razorback configuration. Not all of them were bubble tops. The D model, and I actually got this out of that book, The Secret Horsepower Race. The D model Thunderbolt had to do with the engine and supercharger system that it had on board. That's what made it a D, that added all that power to it. Because like every airplane in World War II, there were a lot of evolutionary steps in the Thunderbolt. The lower turtle deck with the bubble canopy is not what made it a D model. The power plant, superchargers, the internal systems are. And although you had better visibility out of the bubble top, I've heard some people say that the one with the Razorback turtle deck actually had a little more, I guess you call it lateral stability. I don't know if that's true. You know, guys know when the B model Mustang, the Razorback Mustang, when they went to the bubble canopy on the D, that they had to raise the tail because when they cut back the turtle deck, it made the airplane a little less stable laterally. So those will, if I can find a place in my bag, and I think I can, and I'm taking these old drink boxes and trying to make a crush-proof container so they can travel in one piece after I put them together. Of course, I always make sure that the landing gears and the props are not, they're just tack glued in place so I can pluck them out for travel, because those are almost guaranteed to break. So, we have, I'm going to move my little iPad around here, hang on. I brought out Jim Keeler's Custom that the guys at Atlantis gave to me. And I have been told I pulled the plastic off this, but it said I have not even opened the box. And I thought if you guys liked, we would go take a look at this together. All right. Hollow empty box on the inside. The inside box has Atlantis logos and Keeler Customs logos on them. That's pretty cool. And set that there. We have special offer for Atlantis customers, Model Cars magazine. So they have a card with a magazine offer. All right, here's the decal sheet. I hope you guys can see that. All right, that looks pretty clean. Okay. We have rubber tire. By the way, another tire on the Rommel's rod split was recommended by Steve's Model Mania to try and put resin in there to fill it in. I think that's what I'm going to do. But I also have the Duesenberg tires. I think I'm going to put them on the outside to help camouflage it and also give it kind of a wider tire look. So we have a variety of tires. I can't see that very well, but and we got the poly bags. Let's open the first one. How is this? Okay. This poly bag has an odd shape to it. I'll just get the glue and start building right here. All right, here's the body. And no, that's coming off. That's actually just a piece of sprue or runner. Okay, I'm not seeing any flash. I'm not seeing any flash on the body. There's a little flash on the runner. Who cares? That gets clipped off. Tiny little bit of flash right there. No, I mean, that's a 3-second removal. Not bad.
It's very nice looking.
It is, actually. It's a very nice pressing. You know, Kim, what I should have done was set up the camera where this... Well, no, this camera doesn't do real good up close, so I guess it wouldn't matter.
You had that other one.
Okay.
You used to show models on.
Yeah, you know what I should have done? I should have photographed this ahead of time, but I wanted to open it, you know, kind of on air, so to speak. We can all enjoy the experience together. Okay, we have a couple of different colors of styrene here. Okay. There's another bag of components. Oh, I know what I can do. Here we go.
That looks a little bit like Harrison Ford's car
In American Graffiti?
Yeah,
No, he was driving a Chevy, a '57 Chevy or something. One of Steve's car that was the rod, wasn't it? I'm sure somebody is lighting up telling us right now. So there's the... Let's see, you got a couple of grills. Okay, this comes with more than one option.
Yeah, scissors just makes it too easy.
One's smooth and one's got the radiator. Okay, so that's interesting. Got two grills there. Okay, now this next one out of the poly bag is white plastic. And there's your wheels and rims. And apparently you got a couple options on these too, it looks like. That's fairly common in kit model cars to have options on the rims. By the way...
There's a 32 Ford and a 55 Chevy, says Rob.
Yeah,
Altus.
that's I knew it was a mid-50 Chevy. Mike Machad had pointed out in one of his excellent videos that these poly bags, this dates back to a Revell. They spent a lot of money to have business analysts, you know, look at their program, figure out the best way to protect the models from being, you know, molested by people like me who needed a part. And that was what they came up with. They put them in poly bags. Amazing how such a seemingly minor thing can have such a big impact on an industry. We still do it today. All right. Now, the only modeling I did today was painting and cleaning up Snoopy's hockey game with Woodstock. I didn't get to work on Patton's Power Wagon, but I had heard that the Keeler Customs came with extra parts. So there's always a possibility that some of these may make it into my kit bash.
Don't you have a pair of scissors anywhere?
I do. They're probably right behind me. But let's see. First off, we'll look at this. It looks like parts. Again, not really seeing any flash. Maybe a hint here or there. Nothing worth mentioning. And... here are the other parts. Let's see what we got here. We got the engine. Yeah, these are mostly engine components. Yeah, nice crisp molding. Looks good. This is one of those where I'm going to have to detail out the engine because, you know, you're going to be able to see everything.
You can always use your teeth to open it.
Alright, hold on. See if I can do this without breaking anything. I should have some scissors right here. Ah, no.
Yeah, X-Acto knife would work too.
Okay. That's all I should have. Ah, there they are.
Shaggy Buzz is in the building.
Hello, Shaggy Buds. Okay.
Parts are parts.
Pieces parts. Wow, yeah. I think you may have two separate engines for this thing, because this is, let's say this is more aggressive looking. Let's look at them side by side. I'm liking this.
By TJ McCoy.
There's the two parts side by side, two parts trees. We got the instruction sheet next, so Let's see what it says in there.
You have to hold it up there a little bit longer. It's hard to see.
Okay, you know what? I got a solution for that. Okay, and there's pieces. You know what, Ken? I know what I'm going to do. In real time. Oh, here's the instruction sheet. Oop. Aha! I assume this is supposed to be engine wiring. Again, should have done this in advance, but... Okay, we'll be
What is it you're opening up?
Keeler's Customs. It's, okay, I can't flip the button. Hold on a second. There we go. Now, I have no idea. This should work. This should work. Should work. The confidence. I exude confidence. This should work. Dun, 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 dun. Plus.
Oh, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way.
Image. Okay. Browse. Nope, it can't see it that way. I'm going to have to download it real quick. Oh, that's because the thing on the jack on my phone is dying. This phone's getting old, and with the Russians and frickin' Ukraine, everybody's freaking about its supply chain, so it's getting hard to get new phones. Let's see. Image. Hey, this may work. I said it would work. It'll work. It'll work. Relax, it'll work. Aha. Booyah! I'm a genius. No, I'm not. Okay, transform. Fit the screen. There it is. There is one of the parts trees. You guys can get a good look at it. Nice, clean, crisp molding. Okay.
Yeah, that looks good.
So, okay, I'm going to take another picture here real quick. These are the two engine parts trees I'm taking a photo of, side by side, so you can compare them. But they are really nice, crisp, clean moldings. And, let's see, camera.
That desktop looks like it's seen better days.
I beat the crap out of this thing, Ken. It's a working desk.
One of the steering wheels looks like something out of a Cessna.
Ah! Well, you know, you get your parts where you can.
Actually, some of the older airplanes used automotive parts.
Yeah. Are you thinking of one in particular? Ah, you just remembered.
The Cherokee 6 comes to mind.
Ken and I used to fly together in a Cherokee 6, and the door handle broke. And I had to get. I wound up going to a car junkyard, and turned out it was the door handle off of about a '61 Chevrolet pickup, if memory serves me right. That two engines would explain why there's two front ends on it.
By the way, for those people who have heard that story about you and I flying up there and the battery dying, that's the same airplane.
Yep. Ah, the trusty dusty old Cherokee. Well, it was a 1965. I mean, what do you expect?
Got some good stories out of that airplane.
We did, and we're still here to tell them. Hallelujah.
They had a few problems, like the vice grips on the.
Yeah, when the handle finally stripped out, we just started using vice grips. Oh, that looks so good.
I remember one time I got stuck in the airplane and couldn't get out.
Feds that had a cow, if they'd come out and seen that. All right, let me upload a slideshow here. Okay. Oh.
Welcome, Rhonda. Better late than never.
Stop doing that. The phone keeps disconnecting itself. I keep trying to twist the cable to force a connection. But man, when they're worn out, they're worn out.
It's probably the cable more than the phone.
You think so?
Yeah, I've discovered that the cables usually wear out before the phones do.
Well, then I'm going to have to go get a new cable. All right. Okay, guys, here's a slideshow of the rest of the parts. Transform, fit screen. There we go. But they're really good crisp moldings. I can't find anything wrong with them. Of course, I don't know how they're going to fit yet. But I'm sure it's going to be fine. Jim Keeler is very meticulous about those kinds of things. He made, he was made models for the Fisher Craftsman's Body Guild. He holds, some of his models are still in the Hot Rod Kit Model Museum up in Utah. I mean, it's just, he does just magnificent work. Genuinely world-class stuff. But the body is, it's smooth, it's well polished. 500 horsepower, 400, however, good heavens. That's just stupid power. This car has stupid power.
Somebody says it must be a Russian phone.
Man, it's... Oh, got a clear piece of plastic for the windshield. Okay. And it looks like it has... Yeah, it's got plastic. I was going to say... It's a little opaque, but it's got plastic over it. That's why. Oh, that's good. Now, I was just... Oh, there's the instruction sheet. All right.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, you're right, Ken. It does look like a steering wheel out of a Cessna. Heck, it may be. It's a dragster. Yeah, you got two complete engines, all right. You got the 427 Ford competition engine or the Cadillac 354 V8 engine. If I hadn't already dropped an engine in Patton's Power Wagon, I'd probably use this, but that's okay. This ain't going to go to waste. Looks fairly straightforward in the construction. The instructions are only 7 panels. What I have to do with this, though, is I have to do a real good paint job. I'm sure the kit will go together without any argument, but it's going to be the paint job that's going to make or break this. I want to thank the guys at Atlantis for giving me this kit. And Steve over Steve's Model Mania. I think, this kit really, I think, is will be a fairly quick build. So, alrighty, Chuck. Okay, and we're back. So, I built more cars since I started this channel. I built my whole life before. And that's even including military vehicles, probably. For some reason, I'm itching to do a tank. I know I'm going to drag it. One reason I was glad to do these little reveal ones. Ooh, tank. Tankity tank. So, for the Patton's Power Wagon, I was thinking, where am I going to find a 124 scale figure? And I was getting ready to look about ordering some. And then I realized that these kits, which are anime kits, it's an F-100. But it's from the Royal Aslan Air Force fighter pilot Mickey Skyman. This is from, it's by Takara, 1/100 scale. This is from, oh gosh, I forgot the name of the anime this is from. Somebody out there will know and type it in here. And I actually have two of them. I have this one, and I have the F-20 Tiger Shark. But these come with an oversized figure for display with the model. And I looked today and I realized these characters are just about the right size. And with a little putty and a little paint, I can use those on the Patton's Power Wagon. So the kit itself looks like a pretty straightforward F-100 kit. I almost brought these as the road builds, but They wouldn't fit in the box, in my little crush box there. Believe it or not, they're just a little bit too long. So perhaps next time. But he's already in a military uniform. And somebody was like, somebody asked me today, how when you do Patton's Power Wagon, are you going to have any pearl-handled, I was like, oh yeah, pearl-handled grips on the doors. Olive drab, lots of chrome, pearl-handled grips, header, So, and on this one, I think this one has a figure also. Yeah, this one has a figure also. Geez, dig that hair. I was like, yeah, that's anime, all right. That might take a little. Might have to convert that into a helmet. That's hair. Anyway, I'll make do. I also have some heads left over from where Mark Tyler to Mints Miniatures sent me some figures, so I can always lop the head off and put one of those heads on. Except those are resin. All right, here's your question of the day. What kind of glue would you use to make resin to plastic? And I'm guessing a CA glue would do it. That might make an interesting experiment. We're changing heads, Igor. Pearl handles are for pimps. My gun's are ivory handled. Pearl handles are for cheap New Orleans pimp.
Did you have some other things you wanted to talk about tonight?
Well, that was pretty much. There's my book, The Speed Duel. I think I'm gonna. Yeah, this is gonna go with me on the trip also. So I need to put that there. I'll run off without it. Well, guys, what? That was all I got.
Somebody brought up an interesting subject that fits kind of right in here, and I think we can do this without giving the plot away. The new Top Gun movie.
Yeah. What about it? I did go see it. I know some of you guys haven't, which is why I've refrained from talking about it.
Well, we can talk about some of the technical aspects without giving the plot away.
Well, as long as just so long as you don't tell him at the end that he, first off, from a technical standpoint, the modern camera technology, from the movie making standpoint, since they were able to put multiple cameras in the jets, it really, although the first movie was fine, a lot of this footage is done in the airplane. You can tell it is. And it really, really adds to the feel, the vibe of the thing. There is some CGI. There is some, obviously, because, well, I can't say anything, but most of it's real airplanes. And you can sort of tell what is and what isn't a little bit, but it's all good. It's one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. It makes no apologies for what it is. In the era of woke, it makes virtually no attempt to waste time with any of that. It's a good actioneering flick, and it actually managed to have a soul. I mean, the characters in it, they don't waste a lot of time developing them because they're, like Iceman and Maverick are already developed characters. And but they do take enough time to develop the characters enough where you get a feel for them, start to care a little bit, but without dragging it out. A lot more flying than the original.
And of course, the obligatory guys running around on the beach.
But they didn't go for shirtless volleyball this time. And actually, what they did kind of, in a harebrained sort of way, made a little bit of sense, even if it was just an excuse, to have the beach scene. But it was good, and it didn't went any longer than it had to be. And but I think if I may be, a bit prosaic, I suppose, but I really do think that the underlying, I don't want to use the word message. I would say more like sentiment. Is that theme, if you like. It's kind of, at least in the first part of the movie, it's kind of man against machine. The future is coming. Winter is coming. You can't hide from it. But as the movie rightly points out, we're not there yet. You still need people. And I'll kind of let that at that.
I agree. My personal feelings are that the human will never be taken completely out of the cockpit.
Maybe out of the cockpit, but not out of the
loop. Too many variables.
Yeah, but not out of the loop. But that's only a small part, and it's really towards the beginning. The one thing that I was kind of like, yeah, that ain't quite right, but you kind of had to do it was, and this isn't any spoiler or anything, because I think a lot of people are going to say the same thing. The enemy air defenses, I'm like, yeah, that's just a little too visible.
Yeah, like these Generation 7 fighters are to be absolutely feared.
Well, no, Gen 5 fighter is, and they're right that the F-18 is not a match for them.
Well, in a different way. From a stealth point of view, from a systems point of view, yeah, they're more sophisticated, but aerodynamics and physics don't change. The airplanes still have to both obey those laws.
Okay, now I'm going to go. What this kind of dovetails what I talked about earlier. The planes aren't any faster, but because of the amount of thrust they carry and the systems they have on board, most of which are flight control systems, you can simply do things that deny the physics, not the physics of yesterday, the aerodynamics of yesterday. These aircraft can do stuff that no F-14 or Gen 3 or Gen 4 airplane can even hope to come close to. But that being said, I mean, we've all gone to air shows and seen the airplanes standing on their tails and pirouetting and everything else. You just can't do that in another airplane. But I mean, these got more thrust and weight. They have all kinds of computer-aided controls that, the pilot pretty much gives them. He's the ringmaster. He gives it instructions. Put the nose there. Do this, do that, and the computers will dance until the AI takes over and says no and ejects the pilot and takes over and conquers the world. But we'll you just don't have a hope and a prayer, especially in a dogfight. But here's the thing: in the modern parlance, or not the modern parlance, in the modern world, if you get close enough to see the guy, then you've already lost half the advantages of your technology. If you're back to the Mark 1 eyeball. That being said, though, you simply cannot outturn, and outmaneuver some of these newer airplanes. Now, a Gen 5 against a Gen 5, sure. But an F-18, an F-14, an F-15, there are only a handful of countries that have equipment that are a near-peer threat. And, but the best part about Maverick, though, is they tell you these things so that you have that ammunition locked away in your mind for the movie. But they don't just relentlessly beat you over the head with it. But they also, they keep it within the realm of believability. And, Maverick has his own way of dealing with these things based on 40 years of experience. There are very few pilots, if any, in the military today would actually have as much experience as he does, because apparently he's remained a captain so that he could stay a rated naval aviator for 4 decades. And that level of experience for someone that's highly motivated and is that in tune with what he's doing, that's a hard thing to beat. But the movie will show that it's a hard thing to beat, but it's still, even he has limitations. But I don't want to say anything else more about it because I want you to go enjoy the movie if you haven't seen it. And
there were 2 things that really stuck out to me that I can say without giving the plot away. I really thought the relationship between Maverick and Iceman was really good.
Yeah, they did a very good job with that. Oh man, I'm not saying anything else. Yeah. Val Kilmer did a good job.
It was well done.
It was, and
it gave a lot of feeling to the movie and explained a lot of things what was going on too.
It like how Maverick was able to stay around for 40 years as a fighter pilot. Or it also explains what happened to him at the end of the last movie. Remember, at the end of the last movie, he's a Top Gun instructor. Don't say anything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That was well played too. I thought
that
was good.
Yes, I thought that I was like, did not see that coming. So anyway, you guys will enjoy the movie. you don't have to like airplane movies. It's just a good actioneer flick. It's a good good guys are good. Let's stop the bad guys. And but one thing I did notice, it's not a giveaway, but I think it's great. The enemy aircraft had the exact same markings on the wings, the red star with the yellow circle that they had in the original movie. A nice touch. Mav, whatever you do, don't get captured by those guys because they got your number. I have seen the Maverick F-18. The one company is putting out a kit, but it's a small scale. And gosh, I think it was it testers, but it didn't look like. I mean, obviously it's just the little F-18 kit with Maverick's markings. But hey, if it gets kids to buy models, I was very heartened by the fact that there was about a 9-year-old kid at Hurricane Hobbies, looking at models, and I was like, "What do you like to build?" He goes, "Oh, mostly World War II stuff." I was like, "Oh, thank God!"
Well, something else I want to say too. The second scene in the movie that I thought was really interesting, and I can pretty much I can say this without giving away the plot or what's going on, is when Maverick and his wingman got into an F-14.
Yeah, Ken, stop talking.
What?
Stop talking. You're gonna give it away.
Giving away?
Yes.
Nah.
Yes.
Nah.
Yes.
All right.
You've already told him one of the major wows of the movie. Gosh. Can't take you anywhere.
It's still funny.
Oh, it was great. I loved it, but By the way, that when he got his radios back, that was the radar. Look, they got to have something for the audience that lights up, So I get it. And I guess maybe they all came back at the same time, but there were some things in the movie I was like, yeah, that's not how. I do not think they do that the way you think they do that. But I was like, well, look, they got to make it. They got to make it for the all-consuming audience. So some of the stuff's got to be, I hate to use the word dumbed down, but let's just say more obvious than it really would be.
Sorry, Angela.
I'm going to close the communicator. So anyway, yeah, Ken, you see, hey, there you spilled the beans.
Not giving plot away at all.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You clearly, Ken, you do not understand what a plot point is. I do not think that means what you think that means.
I'm changing what I want to talk about.
Good. Now, oh, by the way, I'd mentioned this in a video. Tom Daniel is hopefully going to send me some more information. But Ken, I know you're big into model railroads, and TD was big into model railroads, and he actually painted some of the backgrounds that Walters bought from him and sold as their backdrops that you put up around your railroad. Some of those are TD's artwork. What?
Steve says I didn't go to Dieselland last week, so I got to be quiet.
Yeah, because you had to move into a new house. Woo-hoo. Hope you're enjoying your new home with one channel. Sorry, just had to get that dig in there.
Hey, somebody said they did show an F-14 in the preview. So,
yeah, they did. Yeah, but you never know. That's just a selling point to lure you back in. Just doesn't tell you who's flying it. Doesn't tell you what it's doing there. Stop.
All right. I wanted to talk about something different.
What do you want to talk about?
It was really interesting.
Okay.
It was about they used a Blue Angel pilot to do an actual flying scene when they were going really low because nobody else would do it. And they said, the Blue Angel pilot, their guys, they do that so they could use it in the scene.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, you got to remember that a lot of serving fighter pilots operate under a series of operational restrictions, but guys like on the Blue Angels who are very proficient at things that the average pilot doesn't do every day, yeah, that would make perfect sense. But it's you can always tell when the military helps out with the production of a picture because they have access to the real hardware. One movie that they couldn't use F8, used a lot of models, was Independence Day. The military said, look, we love the script, but we can't have any reference to Area 51. They were like, well, that's too integral to the script. So they had to do it on their own, so none of the airplanes are real. And the scene where they attack and blow up the airfield while the airplanes, those are all 1/32nd scale models. They said they bought every 1/32nd scale F-18, F-16 they could find in southern L.A. But anywho, yeah, the use of plastic kit models in movies is still fairly common, although a lot of people are relying on CGI. But CGI looks like CGI. I was watching the trailers for.
I'm on Max's podcast.
Anyway, all I was getting at was that I saw the trailer for the new Jurassic Park movie, which is a franchise that should have stopped about 3 movies ago. But anyway, the C-119. Hey, and this is where the girl's flying a C-119, and I'm kind of like, okay, the most unbelievable part of this movie is that a C-119 is still flying. But it gets attacked by a pterodactyl or something, and I'm kind of like, I mean, I can just look at it and tell that CGI. It looks like an anime, you know. I'm like, yeah, come on, guys, at least use the model. And I hope that wasn't a model because it looked like CGI to me. But anyway, yeah, I'm here.
You faded away.
Well, I'm getting all that background chatter.
Sorry.
No worries. I'm just putting
the... Be quiet. They're not listening.
Well, what can I say, Ken? You don't have control, you know. You are but a passenger in life. Anyway, I really, although I think CGI is great for enhancing model work, there's nothing like having model. You know, The Mandalorian uses models when they were doing all the special effects of Mandalorian. It uses models, and yeah, the Razor Crest is a model. There's a couple of videos on about them filming it, and one of the reasons I like to do it, he goes, there's a lot of things CGI can't do, and one of them is they took the model, which had a shiny surface on it, and they basically made like a roof of reflective material and flew the model through it, and what it did was it reflected, let's see, the top, let's see if I get this right. The bottom was like a desert. The top was blue sky. They flew the model through there, and then, well, Ken, I'm pulling it away because I'm getting a lot of background noise.
Sorry, I'm trying to cover that up.
Yeah, you can't do that. There are certain frequencies that'll travel over a microphone, that like metal hitting, that are much sharper and get picked up a lot better. In fact, hit your mute button, Ken.
Working on it.
That was a good idea, Darkwood. Anywho, what would happen is they would film the model going through this tunnel that they made, and the model, of course, has all reflective surfaces. Well, they had the map down below of the desert and of the sky above, and it would reflect off of the model, which was going past a green screen. But all the reflections were of the desert below and the sky above. So when they chroma keyed out the background, you see the thing flying by, it's showing the reflections of the ground that's underneath it and the sky that's above it, and it looked freaking awesome. They go to CGI, all of that would have been a nightmare. So yeah, and they said actually that a lot of the staff will go down to the studio where they're using the models because they've never seen models used. They've always had it done in a computer. And they're all thrilled by the old techniques. And they do have that tactile sense. I mean, let's face it, you know, this is that Derringer that was given to me at LS kit that was given to me at Desertland. And you can tell when an actor is interacting with the real thing. There's a certain there's just a certain quality that you can't really catch with CGI. You can turn the mute off.
Also, actors' eyes focus differently. You can actually notice the difference.
So do the audience's. Depth, the field is a tricky thing, a whole bunch of stuff. But models are models, and models make good movies. Dark Star in the opening scene. Yeah, Dark Star. Yeah, chasing that beach ball around the ship. But you look at some of the model work from the 40s and 50s, and you can tell they're models because they didn't move quite right and everything. But imagine if you took some of that old 1940s footage, then put that in the CGI machine just to, make it, add a few features to it, and all of a sudden it starts looking pretty real. There was one crash scene that was reused in a lot of the 40s films of a Japanese fighter crashing. And apparently the Lydecker brothers, they did was they put a wire on it, and the model came apart and exploded, but they kept pulling the wire, so it kept, the debris kept rolling through the trees. I'm like, I know that's a model, but that's really well done. I think they might have used it in the Flying Tigers. I love that movie when I was a little kid, but then I saw it as an adult, and I didn't appreciate just kind of how bad the movie was in a lot of ways. That is a movie. How no one has... They made one in China recently about the Flying Tigers, but it was like early in the war when they only had one P-40 with Bruce Willis and Chenault. And I was like, it was a really bad movie. Really bad movie. But a good Hollywood production of the American Volunteer Group would make a great film, because it's like the Battle of Britain. They had adventures that were the stuff you write books about. And that's why people this day still build models. I bet half the P-40 models built are put in Flying Tigers colors. And, the American Volunteer Group. Back when you could throw on a leather jacket and hide your commission from, get a passport as a priest, and go over and fight a foreign war. Come back home, get commissioned an officer, and keep fighting the war. It's different times. Yeah, Air Force. Air Force had a good crash scene in it. I actually watched, not Radar Men from the Moon. It was what was the one before that? They used the same suit. We were just talking about it last time. Not Captain Midnight. Come on, guys, help me. King of the Rocket Men. After talking about that, I went on YouTube. They're all out there. And I watched the first episode, and I was like, this is really better than it has any right to be. Have any of you guys ever seen, like, King of the Rocket Man, Radar Man? Like, this is actually better. I mean, I'm not talking about it, it's not The Godfather, but it was just like, for a television serial, it was relatively literate. The Lydecker brothers did a good job of the special effects, and I was like, this isn't supposed to be this. These things are supposed to be silly and cheesy, and yeah, okay, the costuming and everything. Although I got to admit, it did kind of like that leather jacket, very Rocketeer. But I was kind of surprised, and the plane crash scene in the beginning. Like, holy crap, that thing really crashed and exploded. Okay. There's a lot of stuff like that you can make. It gets back to the holes in the kit industry. People are making models of stuff that never existed. They're totally bypassing probably public domain stuff that people will buy because they remember seeing it when they were a kid in reruns or whatever. And there's a certain innocence to being able to watch a television serial, take your bicycle, ride downtown, buy the model, build it, put it on your shelf, play with it all the time, and we really did grow up in the best time.
When you were talking about reusing crash scenes, that reminded me of 12 O'Clock High.
Oh, God. They recycled the same footage in that so much.
Oh, yeah, especially that one going straight down into the ground. They use that in so different many shows.
Well, there's that B-17 crashing into the mountain they always use. And it's like no one notices the big X on the side of the mountain. That was a radio-controlled test plane, I'm like, okay. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great footage, but... a movie that had a lot of great footage in it, and they didn't use models, they used real airplanes, was Catch-22. No, Shaggy Buds, I got a couple of cowboy hats right in there.
They used real ones in that movie?
Take care, John Ashley Smith. Appreciate you being there. Yeah. In fact, most people think that Catch-22 has the single most dangerous stunt ever performed in Hollywood aviation. And that is where the entire 16 B-25s, the full squadron, take off at one time in formation. which is not how it was done.
Yeah.
And they said if one of those airplanes had coughed an engine, that would have been it. There was no way the others are going to stop. You would have just had one big pile. You would have had 32 guys. If it was a lead aircraft, you'd had as many as 32 guys just piling up into a big fireball.
I think I remember reading something about that now, where they said if that does happen, immediately pull off to the side. Don't even try to save it.
Yeah, mash the rudder, get off the side of the runway, just get out of the way. Mike's bringing up that Sabre dance footage of the F-100. I actually worked with a guy named Reg Fisher, who sadly passed away. Reg was a retired Maryland Air National Guard pilot. And I think I've told you some of his stories. He knew that guy. And I don't think he was there when it happened, but they were required to study it. And apparently, as I understand it, I may have this wrong, he was actually doing a go-around that got out of hand. He had diverted to that airfield, and they just happened to have the cameras rolling for something else they were filming there. And something happened. He tried to go there, and he just cobbed the power to it, lit the burner, and started the Sabre dance, where he's basically riding the thrust on. The F-100 was a very unforgiving airplane, especially at low speed. And he actually survived the crash for a while, but I think he passed a day or two later from his burns or injuries. And but it was a mess. Oh, by the way, looping back to the F-106, that brings up one other thing I'd forgotten. The early F-106s had real problems with their ejection seats. They finally went to the Weber seat. But if you ever go out on YouTube, watch F-106 ejection test footage, you'll notice a seat comes out and then rotates head back 90 degrees, and then more rockets fire and push it up. And those stabilizing prongs pop out. And that's because you had so much wind blast, they had to get the bottom of the seat facing the wind as quick as they could. And otherwise it would pretty much try to tear your head off, which is how General Bond got killed. He was at Mach 2+, I think, when he had to eject, and he was killed by the wind blast. So if you're going to be flying, if that gets back to, we're talking about flying jets at Mach 2 and everything, and there's no real safe way. That's why the Hustler had those pod ejection systems on it. And so did the Valkyrie.
That's what you call ejection out of the envelope.
Yeah. The Valkyrie, the XB-70 had those, and they actually were used. One of the pilots, that was Cross, I think, was his name, was ejected. I guess his arm got caught in it or something. He broke his arm, but it worked. He came out a lot. Of course, they weren't going Mach 3 when he ejected, and the other pilot, for whatever reason, didn't or couldn't get out, and that was the tragedy behind that. Well, losing the plane and people, but. The Joe Walker was killed, but the real tragedy about it was just a photo mission, and that's one thing I've learned. Bond was killed on his Finney flight. The XB-70 crash was just a photo shoot. There was that B-52 that went down with the whole crew on its Finney flight, and was it Fairchild? I'm like, when you're done flying, it's like Jimmy Doolittle said, when he quit flying all the time, he quit flying together. It was. He's like, it's something you do all the time, or you don't do it all. And so when I retire, people are like, hey, you want to go fly one more trip? Nope, I'm good. That's when the trip. You know what that's like? That's like when you get everything on your model perfect, and then you see one little thing that needs to be adjustment, and you try to fix it, and you ruin the whole model. And we've all done something like that. That little bit of glue smears, and there goes that beautiful paint job. Ah! So
there was also that Sea Dart at an air show. Remember that in Seattle?
Yeah, I forget if the engine exploded on that or what happened, as those old turbines are prone to do.
No, that's not what happened. I read about this.
What happened?
They were holding this big air show, and the city really wanted to show off the latest jet that they were working on.
Because somebody thought it'd be a good idea to put an F-102 on water skis.
Kind of like that, yeah. But it was clean sheet design.
Those were heady days, man. We weren't afraid to try anything.
Yeah. So the engineers were totally against it, because they said, we haven't tested any of, we're still developing this thing. And they were under a lot of pressure to show the airplane off. So they capitulated, and they said, well, tell you what. All we'll do is we'll just make a high-speed pass, and then we'll just pull up. Okay. The engineer said, wait a minute, we haven't tested that. And it's like, what can go wrong? well, the airplane came apart.
Oh, okay.
And it ended up crashing.
Yeah.
It went into a
Yeah, it was in San
uncontrolled
Diego.
oscillation.
Yeah. Mike was pointing out that was in San Diego. But you know what? I got to be honest, though. The idea of an amphibious jet like that actually holds some merit. Because aircraft carriers are big targets. Now, think about this. Now, this is an idea I've toyed with a long time. Pretty much any frigate or destroyer's got a helipad. All right? If you were to put a Zell launcher on a destroyer and the thing could land on the water and get hoisted back the way they used to do the old Kingfishers, and the observation planes on battleships, you could give the fleet that much more jet, fighter capability. It's not as silly as it seems. Now you'd want to Zell launch it, the zero length launcher, because the guys already reported, trying to take those things off, the hitting the height of it knocked the crap out of the pilot, the waves and everything. They're very uncomfortable. Unless you're on super still water. But Zell launch it, land it on the skis, fish it out of the water, put it back on the ship, reload it. Mike also pointed out that it was Major Cross that was killed. It was Al White that was able to caught his elbow, but ejected. But you think about I know now, of course, now we've got VTOL aircraft like the F-35. You can pretty much just put an F-35 on a destroyer, and every destroyer could carry one or two jets, which would give you the ability to disperse your landing fields. But the fact that the thing can land on the water, pretty much any ship can become a tender. All I'm saying is it would allow you a certain flexibility. People look at it today and laugh and going, the whole idea behind the concept of it and planes like the Tradewind and the Seamaster were that we weren't restricted to ships. The Navy wasn't restricted to carriers. You could, put your bases like the Japanese loved float planes in World War II. They used tons of them. Well, we did Catalinas. There's still merit to the idea even today. It's just not something that in the current battle space anybody thinks is necessary. But, the ocean is the airport. Just saying, there's. I'm not saying it's worth pursuing. What I'm saying is there is a certain rational thought process to it. Not as crazy as it sounds. Still a little crazy, but not as crazy as it sounds. And the Russians have an amphibious airliner, can hold 66 passengers, although I saw one of them, and it's a Beriev, I want to say it's the Beriev BE-200. And I saw one of them at Fort Lauderdale. What it was doing there, I have no idea. Like most seaplanes, gigantic because it's got the big boat hull on it, and it's up on its landing gear, so it looks bigger than it is. I was thinking, there are a lot of islands out there in the Caribbean that would love to have, daily airliners sort of land, taxi into the bay, let the people on, Tattoo and, the beginning of Miami Vice with Chalk's Airlines. They still run caravans and malls on floats out of Florida. I see them going in and out of Lauderdale, the islands and stuff. So, okay, I'll be honest. I just think a jet fighter on floats is just cool. It's the cool factor. You there? Ken? You still got your phone muted?
Still muted. I was eating. I didn't think anybody wanted to hear me
no,
chewing.
we did not want to hear you smacking. Wow. You get to eat. I don't get to eat till the show. I don't get to eat till the show's over. And trust me, that is something you don't want to see. But there is a cool factor to jets on skis. But okay, you can remute it.
No, I'm still. You want me to remute?
Well, I'm hearing the background again. Anyway, now I think about it, I've never built Pogo. I've never built the Sea Dart. I did get that Seamaster, so I will be building that'll be my first amphibious jet model when I build that. I'm going to go with the dark blue with the white underbelly, and if I get a second one, then I'll make that one gray. But Seamaster.
I didn't think they ever made a Seamaster.
Oh yeah, they made them and flew them. They just didn't field them. They didn't go into serial production, and it's like the Tradewind. Convair had so many cool ideas and products that they were pursuing. I used to joke. My brother and I actually, I think I may have it up here. The world's worst aircraft, Christmas Bullet, the worst airplane ever, killed both its pilots. But they talked about planes like the Sea Dart and the things that. But I'm like, what could have been. But I just loved it in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Well, I should say the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I think it started dying out in the 70s. It was just nothing they wouldn't try. And planes like the Seamaster got pretty close to going into production. I think orders were being made. But the situation changed. The missiles changed a lot of the stuff. Advances in ICBMs. If they could have gotten the transmissions and the engines on those contra-rotating Convair trade winds to work properly, they'd have really had something. That'd have been a lot of thrust. I mean, the Russians, basically, if it had those Russian engines off the Bear, it would have been a completely viable product. Even today, it would be a perfectly viable airplane because basically a C-130, you could land on the water. And
somebody launched one off a carrier, didn't they?
The C-130, yeah, that was they actually did a couple. I don't think it was just one. I think he did it was a Marine pilot, the test pilot, but I think he did more than one. For some reason, I want to say he did 10, but I don't know why. But yeah, they were just proving it was a proof of concept thing. They built 13 Seamasters, and 2 crashed. The rest were destroyed. Not a shame there isn't one around. God, that'd be a cool airplane. That's the kind of thing Howard Hughes. That'd be Howard Hughes' personal plane.
Problem with those seaplanes is the saltwater injection. Injection.
Naval aircraft and float plane ingestion. Yeah, salt water is the enemy of course, today they probably make out of carbon fiber and stuff like that that's a lot less prone to corrode. But yeah, metal and seawater go together like seawater and metal.
How profound that was.
Yeah. Well, it's rolling around to that time. So, guys, I want to thank everybody tuning in. I hope you had a good time just chatting. And I will hopefully go on reserve tomorrow. I don't think there'll be any more content till I get back unless I'm able to get one of these road builds done. I am going to try and read that book, probably do an online book report, but I'm going to be gone for a while, but I am going to be back next weekend and am planning another live stream. Although, since I won't have much time to prepare for it, it'll probably just be like this. It'll just be more of a conversation. So you guys email me what you want to talk about. And one of the things we might touch on briefly is Paul down in New Zealand has been sending me a lot of great information on these kits that were paint by numbers kits. So we might talk about those a little bit. It's just, I don't think I ever saw one. A lot of them were one-piece things. You get like one piece of styrene and here's the paints, here's the numbers. And I was like, I remember doing the paint by number sets as a kid. And for someone who envisioned himself the amateur artist, I couldn't even do a paint by number set right. But this is all kinds of stuff. But let me know what you'd like to chat about. We'll see everybody later. Ken, say goodnight to the nice people. You can take the mute off.
Yeah, say goodnight.
Yeah, you can say goodnight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. Thanks for checking in. We'll talk to you later as always. Model on. Okay, hit the button, Max. It's here somewhere. Wrong glasses.
You see,